Hello and good afternoon. This will be the first little calm, pretty much heading from work. We're going to be calling it along the river road. I mean, this is only a pilot, so we'll see how this goes. As for what we're going to be talking about today, well, we're going to be talking about some weather, specifically TV weather channels. Now, I know you're going to be saying, well, there's more than one. Yes, there's actually 4 of them out there. One of them is the Weather Channel that you all know and love, based out of Atlanta, now owned by Byron Allen's group. But as for the other 3, you've got Weathernation, which was originally based in the Twin Cities, but is now down out in Denver. You've also got the another one by AccuWeather called AccuWeather Now. Both of those, by the way, are on Roku Stream as well as regular internet stream and even a couple cable TV providers. Please check your providers for that. But there's also a 4th one that just came on the scene, and they're mainly internet right now, but I'm sure they're going to be expanding soon. That one is basically Fox Weather. It's caused a lot of stir in the industry, but to be honest, after viewing all 3 of them, I'll let you know, it's actually not as bad as everybody thinks. So, what exactly are we talking about here? Let's start with Fox Weather, because I basically watched all 3 of them on Wednesday night, going from about 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., gave them about 20 minutes apiece. Fox Weather first. First when I tuned in, they were actually on severe weather coverage. We're talking basically where there were some thunderstorms developed on the south side of the big system that brought all types of cold air from Minnesota all the way down into Texas. There was actually a cluster of severe thunderstorms pretty much in eastern Oklahoma, and that's down to the north and east of the Metroplex. So what we were looking at is, when we tuned into Fox Weather, we were looking at the actual radar and the severe weather warnings. Now, how were they with that coverage? Actually pretty good. I mean, you can tell that, generally speaking, they actually knew what they were talking about. The graphics, they're excellent. Even showed a little bit of a graphic on where to go in your house for a tornado warning, because there was one between Wichita Falls and Dallas along the Red River. So give them kudos for actually making that really good graphic. And overall, the graphics on the TV screen were pretty good, Absolutely perfect, hey, perfect as they can be. I mean, you can tell they actually spent the money on it. Studio also looks quite nice. As for the Mets themselves, I will say, though, that because they are a national channel, yes, they gave good severe weather coverage, but they sort of hung themselves up a little bit too much in northeast Texas, didn't focus as much as in Oklahoma as they could have. And on top of that, you're also looking at a problem where they got so lost in the severe weather coverage, they forgot they were a national weather channel, and they only, at best, glanced over the snow that was coming towards northern Minnesota. They didn't, at least their graphics extended into Canada. Now, too bad they didn't actually highlight anything in Canada, but, they didn't butcher it either, so, for their first week, they didn't do too bad. As for anything else that they were talking, that you can see, I mean, the teamwork between the 2 anchors that were on at the time, one male, one female, actually was pretty good. Clothing choice, no problems. Lighting was excellent. I mean, let's face it, as I said, you can tell they really want this thing to work. As for how the Mets handled some of the radar graphics on TV, the radar graphics themselves are pretty good. Unfortunately, when they got to place some of the map keys, they had to do it manually, which can be done if it's done right. Only problem is that pretty much, you can tell they were still a little fresh with their tools, so they had a little bit of a problem trying to get all the tools going. By the way, I'm on Highway 61 now, what's also known as the road from New Orleans to Thunder Bay. But, I don't know how many of those Mets would know that, but I'm sure they'll get to know it with time. But, as for the actual thunderstorm coverage and the graphics themselves, as I said, pretty good. When they glanced over towards Minnesota, it wasn't too bad, but they only gave it, 1 minute out of, 20 minutes I was fully tuned in, and I was expecting at least a couple more, given that it was going to be, the first major snow for, say, pretty much from eastern parts of North Dakota all the way over towards Duluth. Even the Twin Cities was getting an inch or two. We only got like a dusting. Next system on Saturday actually gave us more. But, you know, at least it was, as I said, one thing I will say, they do have potential. The talent looks good. And I'm talking skill-wise, you know. Hey, I'm not exactly a small fry, so I'm not going to exactly talk about anybody's size. But when it comes to skill and actually being on the screen, they actually were pretty good. You just you could tell that they were using new tools. They're still getting used to it. We'll see what happens when we actually get a little bit further down the line. You know, we're talking, you know, basically late, you know, if we took a second look in, like, say, late January, early February, when you have a big bomb off the East Coast developing down in the Gulf, then we'll see what they actually can do. Now, a little bit, when we go from that, you go over toward, and I went over towards AccuWeather. Now, AccuWeather, I will say this much. First off, I didn't like the fact that pretty much they didn't even really cover the NWS warnings at all. They didn't do jack with that. They should have done a lot more, but they didn't. I mean, they didn't even mention that there were warnings out. So, I mean, that sucks in that respect. Somebody, you know, why they didn't even say that there was weather service warnings. I mean, I don't necessarily expect the national channel to go nuts with them like Fox did, but at the same time, at least say that they're there. That's another matter. They should have done at least that. But when it comes to the actual synoptic coverage nationally, they were actually quite good. You can actually tell our graphics, they're a little more generic with the AccuWeather brand, but at the same time, they actually were informative, and they actually did what they needed to do. And the people on the air, they did what they needed to do without too much of a problem. One thing I will say, though, good news is they actually know that Canada exists, and they actually called the part of Ontario north of Lake Superior, northern Ontario. Thank you. Someone actually recognized a part of Canada. Bad news, though, is not only the warning stuff, but, you know, I mean, their studio itself that they used for the segment between 6 and 7 Central Time. Oh my God, is that thing ugly? And the lighting in that studio, ugh. You know, I mean, I feel bad for the Mets because with better lighting, they would have come off a lot better. You know, I mean, say what you want, say about the live coverage, but the lighting, it just sucked. I mean, now it's a major faux pas right there. That all being said, though, one really good thing about that AccuWeather channel is when you look at some of the features, your 60-second little softy type clips with different stuff with the environment, animal stuff, growing season. Those are actually quite good. Not only voiced quite good and video mixed quite well, but overall, I mean, that content was excellent. You know, I mean, give compliments or compliments due. That actual type of content I can be very happy with. You know, I'd say, that's a big plus for the channel. And they were also leading into their 7 o'clock hour where they were going to do some more coverage. They're about to, like an hour away from the launch for that SpaceX rocket and stuff. But it looks like even their live crew, when they switched to that studio compared to where they were between 6 and 7 Central, that one actually looks nice. But the one they were between 6 and 7, oh my God. As I said, they could do a lot better. They've got the money. They've got even Penn State. If they were more friendly with Penn State, they could probably get some better design tips. But, I mean, at least they were there, and at least you can tell they actually did do some really good stuff for their products, so they do have potential. Now, let's see what they do with it. But we then move on. After that, I went over towards Weathernation. And I think I happened to catch them at a wrong time, because other times of the year when it comes to severe weather coverage, they're actually quite good. I mean, they've had people in the field. They have some of the Mets on air that are actually really good at not only showing the radar stuff and everything. But this evening, the evening that I picked when I was watching this past Wednesday, there was no one live in studio. You can tell that. I mean, they basically mailed it in, and they had their regional weather clips, which by themselves were not that bad. I mean, because I know for the evening weather, especially late evening, they sometimes make one clip and play it for a couple hours. And I know Weathernation's business model, they also do local weathercasts for different local TV stations around the U.S. And I think even one in Canada. So, I mean, I understand that they were a little busy, but I think definitely they got caught flat-footed with that stuff in northeast Texas and eastern Oklahoma. They should have had someone there at least interrupting those clips every once, going in between clips and giving just even like a severe weather update and then go back. I mean, I know they can do that. They've got the people to do it. I just think they mailed it in on that Wednesday night. But the other thing I do like, that unlike AccuWeather, is Weathernation, when it comes to showing warnings for wintertime storms and even some summertime stuff near the border, they will actually show the Canadian warnings as well as the U.S. warnings, which I know you can say, why do I have to hang up with the Canadian stuff? Well, usually it wouldn't be too big a matter, except now, I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen the news lately, but we're actually going to start having cross-border traffic again in time for the holidays. Not only for shopping, but for people going seeing relatives, stuff like that. So, I mean, actually knowing what's going on your northern border, and also southern border for that matter, might be a good thing to be able to relay. So that's one of those things where I think AccuWeather, at least Weathernation, they at least acknowledged it, and they were pretty good on that. Now, as for AccuWeather, they could put that up, but I think they have this hang-up about not putting up government warnings for some reason, whether it's the U.S. or Canada. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the people that were on, but they at least had the winter storm watches that were in effect for the Dakotas, but when it comes to, the severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings, it's like they should have had somebody at least noting that they were there, not going to their app. So overall, I'd say if I were to give, like, say, a one-line statement about each channel, Weathernation should have done better that night, but I know they can. AccuWeather, better studio and better lighting, but I love the feature content. As for Fox News, really good potential, really top of the line equipment. Show me what you can do with it. This winter's going to be the big test for all three of them. So, let's see what happens and hope for the best. There's some good potential besides the boys and girls in Atlanta. So, there is viable competition, which if I was the Byron Allen's group, I would be definitely looking over my shoulder. And especially if Fox Weather makes their stuff available other than just on their app, which I'm thinking they're going to do eventually. That's how they got FS1 on the cable systems as well as Fox Business. They pretty much leveraged Fox News and the other stuff to get it. So, to say Fox Weather won't be showing up on some cable systems soon would be BS. It will be. But, if they, depending on how hard they want to push it and how hard they want to go, I could see all three of them as a legit contender for a Weather Channel. They're all not going away anytime soon, which is, I think, a really good thing. Because competition's always good, and to be honest, Weather Channel was getting pretty stale there with some of those reality shows they were showing. In the middle of a severe outbreak, do we really need to have shows about people getting stuck on the Coquihalla Highway? And yes, that's how it's pronounced, the Coquihalla. Whatever the producers might have used is a little bit different, but so, at least in my opinion, that's how it goes. We'll see what happens. Actually, and as for the snow that we had this weekend, going a little bit more local weather here in St. Paul, I had about an inch in my place, not on Saturday, not too bad. And the good thing is, yeah, it sucks that I had to work overtime, and I had to drive home at 3:30 when the snow was really starting to pick up. But good news was, at least I had to do overtime in first shift, not second. Because right after the sun went down and the wind started picking up a little bit, we had a couple chain reaction accidents happen here in the Twin Cities. Both of them pretty ugly in the amount of cars involved. One was down in Egan on Highway 77, also known as Cedar Avenue. That goes actually from St. Paul all the way down towards Lakeville. So, but yeah, they had a pretty nasty wreck there. And it pretty much was like a couple cars, and then it just got ugly because people were overreacting, going too fast, and you know how those things go. As for the other one, that actually happened on this stretch of highway right here that I'm entering, which is Highway 61, merging onto Interstate 94. So pretty much what happened, there were people that coming off the turn just behind me, and then a couple people reacted wrong. There was a little slowdown, probably up by 35E, and then all of a sudden, bing, bang, boom, you have like a 15, 20 car pileup. Definitely not good. And the reason why that happened, well, a bunch of this roadway has some elevation and bridges on it. And especially the first snowfall of the year when people weren't looking for it, what happens, you pretty much have all that snow, you have that snow, you have the, first dusting of snow, it melts, and it's about 33 degrees, but, even the subsurface temperature's in the 40s, so that's no big deal, except when you're on a bridge, then you don't have that ground subsurface underneath. So one thing about bridges, especially talking on the road with highways, excuse me, there's a reason why you take it really careful on bridges and overpasses in the wintertime in the northern areas, and even in the south too. It's because even though the actual air temperature is about 33 Fahrenheit, or about between 0 and +1 Celsius, the actual temperature of the bridge, depending on the wind speed, I mean, if you're talking, 10, 15 miles an hour, about 15 to 25 clicks, basically what happens, even though your air temperature is at 0 or +1, your actual road surface temperature in a place like right where I am, which is on pretty much a complex little thing here at 35E and 94, pretty much because the wind blows underneath as well as on top, it can cool off as much as 10 Celsius or 18 Fahrenheit. So when you're talking air temperature about 0 Celsius or 32, the actual road temperature with a decent wind at the right direction, that could be down at 14 degrees. And one thing about road salts, regular road salt that most people are used to, not in Minnesota, you're used to more of a mix, but like say in Pennsylvania, most of New York, New Jersey, they use regular old rock salt, which is similar to what would be table salt, regular sodium chloride. That works generally well, but it only works down to about 14 or 15 degrees, and it refreezes and turns everything into a mess. And below that, you have to go say a calcium chloride, which is your Quick Joe, or magnesium chloride, which is some other stuff. They're good chemicals, excuse me. And they work all the way down to between 0 and -5 Fahrenheit, which is about -20 Celsius. But the only problem with that is you got to be sure you get the right stuff on originally, because if you don't, and what happened with a lot of these overpasses is, the air temperature was 0, but the bridges ended up chilling down to about -10 Celsius, and your regular salt that they might have put on for the first snow of the year, and also the fact, remember, people somehow forget, even in Minnesota, that, it does snow up here, and you have to change how you drive. So you have that little problem, and it ends up People slip. They go all types of weird directions. They forget, you have to actually take your time, give extra space. And, yeah, insurance companies get very unhappy very quick. But, it is what it is. You do what you can do. And just so you know, by the way, I am in downtown St. Paul right now over by Regions Hospital, just to give you some perspective on time. But, it is what it is. And, driving in the wintertime, if you have that, and also don't check your tire pressure beforehand, a week or so beforehand, when it starts to cool down and your tire's also a little low, guess what? You're basically in big trouble. You're sliding, and that's not a good thing. So, you just have to watch yourself, do what you need to do, and also remember to give yourself extra space. It's wintertime. Snow doesn't, you don't get as much grip, so you just have to be careful. But on days like today, where it's sunny and right now about 40 according to my car temp sensor, it's not great, but it's not bad. And, there were also, I know, some outlooks for storms coming up the next week. And, yeah, it's not necessarily looking the greatest. Sorry, but, hey, it is November. We start to expect stuff by now. And, of course, one thing in the internet you gotta love, the dreaded 7 to 10 day operational model snow map. Or what, like regular Mets call, okay, who the hell is showing this on the air? You don't like to, when, the one thing that frustrates people more than most in the weather industry, especially these days, before you can get away with it because there weren't that many models out there, but now, most of your regular forecasting is done via what's called ensemble forecasting, which is, we don't just look at one model, and we just don't look at one run of the model. We try to compare all of them, see what's the most likely outcome, and if permissions go from there, we make it work. So, it's a little bit more work at times, download a little more data, which is why I wish one of these days I could actually get, FiOS up in my apartment, but, CenturyLink, that's another matter. But when it comes to the forecasting, one model panel does not a forecast make. And, when you're talking some 16 or 17-year-old kid trying to make a name with themselves by posting one of those things and trying to say it's end of the world, whether it's severe weather in the summertime or in the wintertime, trying to say, give us the Armageddon of snowstorms at 10 to 12 day mark out. That's just one of those things like, most of us in the industry just look at them like, okay, now you're giving us a whole bunch of work we don't need to do. Why do you have to be such a pain about it? So, it's, start to watch for that, folks, when you're on the internet. And why this person is tailgating me at 40 miles an hour when I'm 10 over the speed limit here on Jackson Street is beyond me. Come on. If you have to go somewhere, you should have left sooner. So, that being said, other than that, I know there's some other political stuff going on, but to be honest, for a pilot episode, we're just going to be going more into the weather side because, let's face it, I am a meteorologist at heart, I am a weather geek at heart, and yes, I go into the politics if you ever see my Twitter feed or Facebook, but I prefer to go with the weather stuff because, most every Met agrees that, yeah, there are certain times when you can call politics off to the side and say, yeah, we need to warn the public first. So that's what I do. And that's one thing I love about the weather field is, yeah, we have our own politics, we have all our own problems, but when it comes to actually severe weather, when it comes to the big snows, big ice storms, that's when we all get together and we say we put all our differences aside for the moment. We got to keep people safe. we can worry about the politics of it later, but let's just, worry about people now. I wish more groups would do that in politics and otherwise. But God forbid that would actually be a little bit of a miracle, But, that's just me talking. Overall, this is definitely one of those, for me, by the way, I am back in my neighborhood right now. This isn't Maryland Avenue East in the north end of St. Paul. Sylvan Street, by the way, is actually just so you get a reference, the street where my apartment building's on, that's actually the east-west borderline for the north end of St. Paul. Go figure, But, it's fall, the leaves are coming down, we had our first snow, most of it's gone except on some of the roofs, but there'll be more to come. At least today it's not too bad. And as for, the rest of this drive, we're just in the neighborhood now. Hopefully everybody got a little bit informed about who I am, where I am, and what I'm capable of talking about. As I said, none of those new weather channels are really that bad. I would say AccuWeather is best if you want the features right now, and synoptic stuff if you want severe weather coverage. Weathernation, if they actually show up, are actually quite good. As for Fox Weather, keep an eye on them. They have the potential to really do some good, but let's see if they actually execute, because that's always the big concern with new channels. Will they execute what they need to do? So, with that being said, I'm home. That's all she wrote. Have a good afternoon and a good evening. Bye.